Hello and welcome back to this week's podcast. And on this week's podcast, we're going to be talking all things PDA parenting. As a parent myself to 4 neurodivergent children, 2 of whom have a PDA profile, I was really interested in speaking with Danielle, as she's a parent herself to 3 neurodivergent children. All of her children have a PDA profile. And Danielle is also the founder of an incredible website, www.pdaparenting.com. And Danielle has a wealth of professional and personal experience to share. Danielle is an autistic ADHD parent, and she will be speaking through the lens of the professional, but also as the parent and the advocacy that she has, I suppose, provided for her children over the years, but also the roadblocks and the barriers she's faced as the incredible parent that she is. She'll also give advice and support and strategies to professionals and parents, I suppose, tilting and refocusing the lens on what it is to be neuro-affirming, but more particularly how to support children, teens and young adults who are PDA. So I hope you enjoyed the podcast and I look forward to hearing what you have to say about it. So definitely let us know in the comments or on social what you think and join the conversation. So thank you. And let's get on to the podcast. Hello, Danielle, and you are so welcome to the Unfiltered Autistic Podcast. I suppose as a parent to 4 neurodivergent children myself, 2 of whom are PDA, and I would consider myself also to have a PDA profile. You've been talking about PDA long before I would hear all of the masses that now talk about PDA online. You've been talking about PDA for years. You've been supporting professionals, supporting families, sharing your lived experience as a parent to 3 incredible young ladies. Yeah. For anyone listening to the podcast, if you want to maybe give them maybe an introduction to yourself, and I suppose then we'll get on to all of the questions that I have for yourself about PDA. So thank you so much and thanks for being here.
I think my own PDA is kicking in now because I get embarrassed if anyone says anything positive. I'm a single parent to 3 children. We've had a hell of a ride through school and journeys, parent blame, emotional based school avoidance. I think you name it, we've got the t-shirt. It's been quite a challenging time. I'm by trade, I actually trained as an actress, so that was my kind of goal really to be, but I kind of had to drop everything and kind of parent the way that I needed to, because I just became a full-time carer pretty quickly. I've also found out that I'm autistic and ADHD myself, likely with a PDA profile, did get pulled up in the assessment. And my nickname is Shirker because I avoid things that I don't like doing. And I've worked in education as well. I've run a support group and things like that. And I write books on PDA. And I think really where I started with this was because when my daughter was 4, we were hugely misunderstood, and talked about quite a lot. And we had a lot of staff from a school that tried to get rid of us, basically. It was at that point once I started writing, because I was told, I found this profile PDA and it really made sense for my daughter because I tried everything before that point. And once I found this thing and it made sense, I couldn't wait to tell all these professionals. And I was told, write down, that thing doesn't exist. We don't diagnose that here. And that's the first warn I got. So that's what first. And I actually started writing because I wrote, I was more or less off social media at that point. I just needed to just kind of get my head into a good space. And I started writing this thing down about just another bedtime, because it was just another bedtime, but another bedtime of absolute chaos. And I thought, why is it like this? And I sent it to 2 of my friends, and one of them said, do you know what, you should post that online. I think you could help other parents. And that's where it kind of started. So a combination of writing something for myself and then being said, maybe you could share that, but also because PDA was told, I was told it didn't exist. And that was enough for someone like me to get like a dog with a bone. I had to try and push it really, because I couldn't bear the fact that, I've got an answer and a solution, and yet I'm being told that's not going to help. So, yeah.
I'm really glad that you wrote just another bedtime. I suppose when we were talking about PDA there, you referenced kind of maybe parent shame, being judged. I suppose for any parents listening, or if you feel okay to chat about it, do you want to talk maybe a little bit about your own experience? And just as a parent myself to 4 autistic children, 2 of a PDA profile, I have definitely felt shame and maybe judgment at times where, say, 2 of my children and 2 of my boys have high support needs. Well, one has a PDA profile, one doesn't. But I would think that sometimes I'm misjudged for, or maybe it's my own personal self-reflective, maybe ableism even I have of my own approach, that sometimes I feel that I'm being judged of like, how can two of my children manage particularly okay in certain scenarios, and one particular boy that presents a very particular way, they'd be like, oh, is that just for attention, or like, oh, could you just tell him to get on with it? And I'm like, he really can't, like, this is really difficult. So I do feel that shame and that difficulty. Do you feel that yourself, or if you're happy to talk about it, what has been your experiences?
The first issue is that it becomes controversial because we are doing something against the grain of what we're being shown. Traditional parenting has come along through the ages, and if you're doing something different, straight away people think that it's not going to work or it's the wrong thing to be doing. So you're kind of met up with that wall of resistance anyway. Parent blame has been through my entire existence, and part of the work that I've done, I worked with another author called Alice Running, and we did a joint project on parental blame, and we kind of surveyed over 1,000 parents. In fact, 1,000 parents had responded to the survey within about 36 hours, and we had to shut the survey down because we weren't going to be able to deal with the level of information and dissect the data. Anyway, just to explain that, what we were seeing is reoccurring problems, and there can be more types of parent blame depending on what your situation is. So your social situation, if you're a person of colour, if you are single parent, if you're neurodivergent yourself, which is most of us, lots of these factors can create more chance of us being parent blamed. And I had multiple ones there. I was single. Obviously, I was separated from my ex-husband at that point, so that was seen as the reason why my children were the way that they were. I've had to take the blame for multiple things, and from being also neurodivergent myself, people didn't like the fact that I would research and perhaps know more information than the professionals in front of me, not because I'm amazing, but because I had that kind of passion for, I've got to find out this information, I've got to do better, and it's sort of that hyper focus that we all have. So yeah, lots of those kind of factors. Where also another common occurring problem is if you've got more than one child, like you're saying, who are neurodivergent, and then they present slightly different, so you're often being told that they're being they're copying their brothers or sisters, or in my sense it was mum's making this up, mum's fabricating it. So then I became into the typeset of fabricated and induced illness. And once that becomes named across professionals, they almost look for evidence to prove that is happening. And it's very hard to unpick yourself from it. So you read in my post yesterday that said I had to take myself off of social media. I had people outside. I could see people in the cars waiting outside, observing whether I was leaving the house, whether what I was saying was true, turning up, trying to get my children in this private room to have a discussion. And they were being led to even say, for instance, to call their dad to see if what he would say about it. There would be so many different elements of what this was going on, and in meetings I was completely shut out. So, and isn't that a contradiction here? Like I could be somebody who could be influenced online. I came out of one conference. I actually donated my my money there for to the PDA Society. I'd a conference of like over 300 delegates, and in that same moment, I came out that conference and found out that a whole big professionals meeting had been put on, and I was not informed or included in it so that they could discuss what was going on. And that has happened time and time again. We have overcome part of that now because of having great advocates behind me, not giving up, being able to really kind of push back. And it's taken so much work. And I think if I was in the position, if there's anyone listening at the moment, is that I would really just keep yourself covered, keep email trails, keep yourself away from being vulnerable, away from emotively responding to details, trying to take those facts, trying to have somebody with you and present, even a note taker, taking the moments to actually just backtrack and being aware of what's going on, because I think having that kind of slowed down response just helps you kind of push forwards, because it can be very, very difficult. It can be difficult for some single parents where they've got another parent who might be disagreeing with what their understanding on PDA is. Yeah, so it's such a controversial thing because staff don't often understand PDA, families, neighbours, everybody. There's such a lack of consistency in what the understanding is, and there we face the judgment. And if you're being targeted with judgment, it's very hard to unpick yourself out of it.
Gosh, Danielle, that was great advice for anyone listening. So your advice is, that you may face judgment, but to keep a level head, try and keep yourself grounded, try and keep emotion to the back of it while you're, say, interacting with individuals that may be passing judgment just because they might have the information available to them, or may misjudge what they're seeing. What is PDA? They may not. They might see it as, that phrase I hate, challenging behaviour. They might not really understand it. So to document, to keep yourself grounded, to learn as much as you can, and to have evidence basis for what you're saying. So for example, in the UK, you've got the incredible PDA Society with so much fantastic information on there, and your own website, pdaparenting.com. I know I myself have engaged with it. I was, having a quick look, because I love a good PDF. You've great resources that are downloadable. You've online recorded trainings for parents, professionals. That's just a tip of the iceberg. There's so much information on there. If I'm a parent and I'm thinking that maybe my child might be PDA, is there anything you think they could do, say now listening, or they believe they're PDA, but maybe their child is going to school next year, or maybe the child has had a tricky time in school and has time. I dropped out of the secondary school myself for 2 years. Now, it was more to do with burnout, which probably was related to the PDA actually, but it was specifically burnout. I found the fourth year so difficult. I dropped out after a couple of weeks of the first term. I was only there a couple of weeks, and then I couldn't go. I tried to go back the second year to say for fifth year, and I couldn't do it. So I dropped out for 2 years. I eventually went back. If you're a parent listening and you think your child might be PDA, have you advice for them?
Just doing as much research as you can to just kind of start to understand what it is. And that takes time to just relearn your own wiring and what your own response system is, because I can guarantee you'll have quite a lot of ableism, which I did, and there's a lot of unlearning we have to do to be able to put the right kind of approach and see this new focal lens. I think one thing that can really help is if you start kind of approaching things differently, changing that focal lens and applying more of a PDA parenting strategies, so much more collaborative, understanding, meeting the child where they're at. I mean, the list of these would go on and on, but they're kind of the examples of how we would twist our understanding and approach. I think when you start to do that, and you could start documenting, how does it make a difference? Am I seeing something different? Because if the child responds better in that way, that could be a clear indication that there is, a change. I remember once, because obviously I was in that position where, nobody was believing me and I was told it didn't exist. I went to the PDA Society, and they have like a checklist called an EDAQ, and it's like it's not a diagnosis tool, but what it does do is it gives you an indication as, is there likely to be a demand avoidant profile present? So I filled that out, and I also gave a copy to the school teacher, and I asked her to fill it out, and we were like 2 points apart. We actually had it match to match. So once I had the first assessment with the paediatrician, I could bring this bit of evidence and say, look, this is this. And actually it became something that they couldn't push back because the evidence spoke louder. And I think that's what I would start doing really, is start to kind of, it's like gathering your ducks in a row, isn't it? It's really starting to trying to look at, if you can be this professional parent, it's almost like trying to find a way to evidence what you're seeing in front of you. And I think there's this fine line between not oversharing too much and sending, spamming services or teachers and stuff with too much information, because actually that can also become another indication of fee and stuff like that, fabricated induced illness. But it can be another case of, if you actually start sending and sharing slides, like that's why I've done those PDFs, they're free to download. But actually, I think sometimes if someone else is sharing that information, I found this sounds like little Amanda. Would you be able to look through it? It's almost sowing those seeds to try and get that kind of information out there, because it doesn't change overnight. I think if you expect something to happen instantly, it's not going to change, but we start to influence in a positive way. That's been my approach, and I feel like it's kind of got me somewhere. We may see things differently, that the child is not choosing. They're not, there can often be this the child is defiant or naughty or, you know, wants their own way. But actually, it's completely the opposite. What they're trying to do is control their sense of safety. And if we can flip that narrative, we'll see the child in a different light.
You referenced kind of felt safety there. If I'm a parent or a professional listening, do you feel that felt safety is really important for the professional or the parent to understand but also what does it mean for the child to have that feeling of felt safety, and what can the parent or the professional do?
I think the first step is no step. So what I mean by that is, you know, the moment you're going to take a step forward, the faster they're going to retreat. And because what we have to remember there is an automatic nervous system, and a nervous system that is so high alert all of the time. You know, can you imagine like a wild animal that's absolutely frazzled and is scared that they're going to be eaten or something? It's like that. It's that kind of high level. And actually, the moment I'm going to take a step towards you, you're going to take a step back. So it's actually taking and allowing that child. So that would be my first one. I would be looking at doing things differently. So allowing to go, you know, approaching it in a different light. So it may well be that verbal communication is far too much. So texting might engage with somebody. It may, you know, how do we do something that's so not demanding to actually start to establish it? The third thing then I would say, because that would be on the trust side, but is actually building relationship. The relationship building is key because, you know, a child can tolerate demands that, you know, well, we're not saying permissive parenting or permissive education where, you know, there's going to be no demands at all on the child. It's actually reading that radar continuously and allowing that sort of tolerance to uncertainty. So how well does the child respond in that moment? And so, you know, if we can keep with that kind of understanding of relationship means that if they've built that relationship with you, gradually you read the signs, you know when you can add more, when you can take things away, what they're kind of, you know, you're in tune with them. I would say confidence to do things differently in a against the grain. Does it matter if the child comes in at the last part of the day for the last 5 minutes, or even the 5 minutes when everyone else has left at 3:30, say, and you know the class have left, and actually the child needs to adjust and get used to you? They could come in at that time and start building backwards. You know, things don't have to be linear, you know, trying to find ways in a different way, which then leads on to the last one, which would be about progress. I think the fact we have to remember this automatic nervous response. We can't change that. That's a drive inside that, you know, the nervous system is so disbalanced. So to expect progress to be, well, actually, you did this day, you can do it tomorrow. It's not going to work like that. We need to treat every day anew and kind of see progress where it happens. And those pocketfuls of positivity happen over time. And if you kind of, you know, you're not waiting to, okay, well, you can only come in and do this if you've achieved this. Well, then you're kind of setting the child up to fail. If you can actually see the moments and celebrate with them, I think you can start to see, you know, success looks different for a PDA. And if we can tune into their world instead of expecting them to be into the world of what everyone else is in, you know, you need to enter their world, not the opposite.
Amazing. And even just the piece there where you're saying, look at the positives, like there's so many strengths I would say that my boys would have, all of my children would have. I have a daughter and 3 sons, but I suppose focusing on PDA for today, like I would see they have very specific strengths that maybe they may not have had if they were in PDA. I think the way that I am as a human being, I may not have been that way if I didn't have a PDA profile. So being PDA or having a PDA profile isn't a negative. It can be a negative with the way how other people treat you if you're a little bit different. You might have a PDA profile, but inherently being PDA is not, for me personally, not negative. I don't see my gorgeous Jack or Max as negative because they have a PDA profile. I just wish, as I suppose maybe that's what we're trying to do with the podcast today, change the narrative around PDA and look at the strengths and all of that. And you've actually done that as well, not only through training, not only through resources, not only through, I won't reference my own podcast as being on an incredible podcast, but you've been on a number of incredible online, I suppose, platforms talking about PDA. But you've also written a phenomenal book called, I'm going to hopefully say this correctly now, Black Rainbow. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because you've also written specific books on PDA, but this is more a novel, I believe. Is that correct?
Yeah. So the first book I did was a children's book that I co-authored called I'm Not Upside Down, I'm Downside Up, and that was like through the eyes of my daughter, where you kind of see what's life like with PDA. So it's kind of mid-teen kind of thing. And I've also got another book coming out in the summer, which is about emotional based school avoidance for a child who has much more of an internalized version of PDA and finds it a struggle and kind of has that crash, much like what you were discussing earlier. So they're the two children's books, but in terms of a novel, I really wanted to tell a story where it's like a collective truth of what our families face. And there was a specific reason for that, because the parent blame that was happening, because I've had that repeatedly, but when I got those fee allegations, I kind of had to completely shut everything down. I kind of had to hold my page. It was sort of disabled for a while and I couldn't write. I couldn't do anything. So as my dad always says, my pen is my sword, and that's where I started writing. So I had this story of a woman whose voice was, being quashed everywhere, and she's against, continuous judgment from family, from professionals, a young spirited daughter that's, struggling with school, and she's kind of the only person who starts to see the daughter for who she is. And it takes a meeting in a park with a stranger that actually starts to unlock a new situation, and the theme of the Black Rainbow runs through it, and that's where I can't really tell too much because otherwise it gives the plot away. But that kind of the themology around what the child feels and why they're part of a black rainbow is key to the story. I'm hoping to do a trilogy of these, and the reason for that is that the first book kind of establishes the world. I want to really tell a universal truth of what happens, but it couldn't go too deep to start. It needed to kind of establish what we're in. But I really want to push with a lot of the ideas of parent blame and actually what families are like for us, because when I said I did that the parent survey with the fellow author, I conducted a lot of interviews with some parents, and we could take some of their information, and there were parents where their children were taken off of them, even worse, children, can I say a trigger warning, children that had also deceased during that time. It's beyond any level once these situations happen. And for me, I just want to really kind of tell a truth to what is happening to families out there, because, I'm fortunate that I have good parents behind me, and also that I was educated, so I could fight my way out. Other families have so many different elements to their own capacity to be able to fight back, and that's not right. So my passion's always been to protect other families and to make a difference for those children who are misunderstood. If I can stop other families being misunderstood, that's my biggest reward in doing this work. So that's what kind of Black Rainbow's about.
And you were saying that, I was just thinking to myself, and that's where I see your PDA profile. It's the strive for where it's inequitable, what's happening across schools, across therapeutic settings. And not that we have incredible teachers. In Ireland, we call them SNAs, incredible SNAs, incredible therapists, incredible professionals in all walks of life. But then we can have those kind of tricky moments where people, despite their best efforts or whatever's going on, they may just not see things as clearly as you do. So I feel that's where you're like, I think I'm PD. I'm like, I always kind of feel really connected to people that remind me of myself. I don't know if that's selfish of myself, but I feel like really like you're very similar to myself. That's why I feel like I'm totally at ease chatting to you. So I feel like, as your dad said to you, your pen is your sword. It is exactly that. It's like you were stopped in one way to try and just advocate, we'll say, through social, and then you're like, no, that's inequitable. I'm actually going to do it this way now. I'm going to equalize, and I'm going to actually do what I need to do, which is the right thing to do. So that's where as I said, I don't really wear a hat. My forehead is too big, but if I did, I would say my hat is off to you. You're a phenomenal lady. I suppose then, just to close out, you mentioned there a few times about emotion-based school avoidance. As a parent of two PDA children, every day my gorgeous Max is, he's 8, but he's particularly small because of our fit. So he looks maybe 5, 6 maybe. So he's very slight and very small. But every day he'll say, day off. And he loves the school, and he's a lovely teacher and lovely principal. Like we're very, very lucky at the school. But every day he'll go, day off, and then I'll go, because obviously he needs to go to school now. He's very lucky, and they're very receptive to his needs and everything. So I've no worries there. So every day I'll go, Saturday is a day off, or whatever. And then on Sunday he woke up and he'll go, day off, and I'll go, a day off today, and he'll go, 10 day off, and I'll say, no. So he's very cute. So it's at the moment I can kind of support him and help him to get on the bus and go to school. But then my eldest boy Jack, he's had a very tricky year where I suppose he's going through puberty. So in Ireland it's called primary, and then secondary is when you go off to, when you're like 13, you go off to the next stage for, I think it's about, I'm going to say 6 years, hopefully I'm right, until you're 18, around that, well, 12, it could be 19. I suppose if you're starting at 13, it might be 19. But the point is, like he's had a very tricky year of like lots of big emotions, lots of big kind of flares at school. And again, very lucky with school and all of that. But he will also say, "Oh, can I have a day off, mom? Can I not go in?" So for Jack, in a different way to Max, he will have what we call them reset days, because I don't want him to ever think he's wrong for being the way that he is. He's just trying to navigate an overwhelming world, and we have a fantastic relationship with his principal and his teachers and SNAs and everyone. So we have an agreement in place that if school notice or I notice or collectively we notice that it's all getting a little bit too much for Jack, for his nervous system, for his regulation, for his capacity to attend or even feel safe to be there, he'll have a few days of reset, maybe a day or two, whatever it is, a reset. So what reset looks like for ourselves is, so he's never been like what's that word, suspended or any of those things. We'll just say to each other, think he needs a reset day. I'll be great. So his reset days then are literally that I'll still have him do, he'll come into my office here, he'll do a little bit of schoolwork, but the schoolwork that he's doing, we've already got from the school like ahead of time, like way ahead of time, like months ago. But it's like work he could have done maybe 4 or 5 years ago, because I don't really need him to do the academics, but I just need him to know that we're still engaging with something related to school on those days. He'd be able to probably do those little pieces of work, like it might be 3 or 4 worksheets, nothing major, and then he just rests for the rest of the day, because I just need him to still, because of his profile, he has that intellectual disability as well. So just for his very specific profile, I make sure he still has contact with school on those reset days, and then he just resets, like relaxes, chills, the house is quiet, he's here on his own, I'm working in the office, he'll potter around the house, outside maybe, whatever he's doing. And then when he's ready and I can see that he's kind of feeling more settled and safe, he'll go back to school. And then they usually have like in his school they'll have like a coffee morning where he might meet the principal and the teacher, and he's like, he calls his lovely principal the big guy, because he's like, the top dog. So Jack, he's a lovely man, Kieran, and he'll have a cup of tea with Kieran, and life moves on again. And there's nothing said about, say, any tricky times he had before he went on the reset days, and life moves on again. So I found that really helpful to keep Jack in school. But it definitely is a constant awareness that I have that it's like we're in primary now and he's about to move to secondary. And I know again we're very lucky with secondary, but it is a pressure on myself to make sure everything is fine all the time. And you mentioned this earlier, like the pressure on parents and the shame, but it's a constant awareness that I have. For anyone listening, I suppose, and we're thinking about for children that maybe PDA and maybe finding it tricky to attend or remain in school, have you any kind of insight, maybe lived experience or maybe advice that you have found helpful for maybe yourself or other parents in the work that you do?
Well, do you know what? It's going to be really hard to follow that, because what you've just done there with those reset days is just like, that's just amazing. That's the sort of thing that people need to do. And it's like a perfect example, school and parent professionally working collaboratively, that's just wonderful. And I think that would be the ideal. Obviously not everyone has that, and that's the tricky part, and trying to get other staff to understand. So for me, I never really had that opportunity, because instantly it was put down as blame, and that it was a parental issue. And instead of implementing small changes like that, those kind of moments, it led to so much to then it becomes burnout, and it's very hard to actually then get the child back. So finding ways to release those pressure valves, which is again they're like a reset day, but finding, and this isn't forcing the child, like, okay, putting them on a reduced timetable and telling them they can only come in for these lessons, because actually that becomes so restrictive. That's not helping either. It's finding ways that actually support the child in what they need. So do they need to, what lessons go on through the day? Do they need almost little moments throughout the day? Is the uniform too itchy? Perhaps, that could be depending on what's going on to the child. So if they're for instance, so once I started getting changes putting into place, so my daughter might have came in with like a very loose kind of jersey top or something, polo shirt, so that actually it started to become less itchy. And having the moments in the day, where can they decompress, where can they have their time to actually just reflect, to not have things like even being forced to do homework. All of those kind of elements are what can we start taking away in terms of demands to actually help them reset, depending, in an ideal world, if the school would work with you and allow you to read those moments, those nervous system moments of actually that child needs a reset, that that's perfect. So how can we do those moments through the day? Do they need a sensory break outside? trying to liaise with the school and finding ways to actually collaborate together would be the most, it would be the best option. I would be advocating, if there's a huge resistance there, I would be really trying to kind of quote material and finding ways to push forward to try and ensure that the child does have those breaks, however that looks for the individual. And I think you can then keep school going for as long as possible, really, until it does. Sometimes things work until they don't work. And, with that right ethos around you, you can make things work much longer than you can if you're just sticking to very rigid thought patterns of this is what we expect from our learners. The moment you do that, it's game over, I think, and head into burnout.
Absolutely, Danielle. I know exactly what you're trying to say there. So it's really looking at, I suppose in our situation, it's a little bit like a utopia, like how lucky are we? But I suppose I've had all of my children go through this incredible school. So I'm there probably as long as some of the furniture in the school. But I know we could be the exception because not every school might have the knowledge bases or the experience. Now, Principal Kieran in the school where my boys go, he's been like long before the word neuroaffirmative ever existed. He was always neuroaffirmative. That was way back. Like my eldest boy is 16, almost 17. My eldest, I suppose my only girl, my daughter is 18. So he's been on the go, like Kieran, and as a principal, as a professional school, like I won't estimate, but I'm going to say well over 20 years, even longer. He's phenomenal. So I suppose that we have the utopia experience. What you're saying there for families is that may not be the reality, and even though schools might want to provide that, they might not have the tools and the resources and the opportunities. And that's where, again, I refer people to your incredible website, pdaparenting.com. And I'm really looking forward to reading your trilogy. I'm definitely going to get my hands on, as you can see in the background, I do love a good book. I'm looking forward to ordering The Black Rainbow. And I'd already heard of, I'm going to say this wrong again, is it, do you want to call the title, is it Downside Up or Upside Down?
I know it's a bit confusing. It's tongue time, isn't it? I'm not upside down, I'm downside up.
I'm definitely going to get my hands on that because I love a good book on PDA. And your upcoming book, again, do you want to chat a little bit about what that's going to be on, emotion-based school avoidance?
So it's called The School is Lava. And it's about a story about emotionally based school avoidance. So it's about a young girl called Liv. She's part of a family with autistic siblings, and she usually goes to school, but there becomes a stage where she really struggles and things start to break down. And things don't always work. So it's trying to find a way forward of, trying to help other children out there, because there'll be so many in schools that find school really tough. And actually, rather than blaming the child, let's have a look through the eyes of the child. What's not working, and how can we start to adapt our thinking and see what alternatives there might be? So it's not prescriptive as there's got to be one solution. Actually, there could be lots of solutions. But how do we look at the child as an individual and start changing our focus on them?
Gosh, that's amazing. I will definitely be ordering that because you might not be able to see it on camera, but I have a whole section of children's books kind of behind me, and I had to donate a lot of them to my boys' bedroom because I had so many books in this office. I had no space for them, but it's all the better because they're both autistic in they share bedroom, so they're reading books about autism and many different things all the time, so it's pretty good. So listen, I'll leave it there. I don't want to take too much more of your time, but listen, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. If everyone would like to read the description part of this podcast, down below, I suppose below the podcast itself, you'll find lots of incredible information about Danielle, her website, PDAparenting.com, her books, her trainings. Oh my gosh, you're such a powerhouse. Her resources, her online store, like there's so much there, so much knowledge, but it's not even just the knowledge and the resources, it's the lived experience. This is your life. You're an incredible parent. You've 3 incredible children. Are they all PDA, Danielle? I meant to ask you that.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, they are. Two external, but one more internal.
Internal, yeah.
They're different.
I feel like I'd be internal for anyone listening. So you can have a presentation, external or internal. My son, my eldest boy that has PDA would be external. My youngest boy, I would say, would be an internalizer, and same as myself. And I'll just be like, I'll do the thing, but it'll cost me so much for my health and my well-being to do the thing. And then later I'll flatline then afterwards. So yeah. So again, I'm going to put in links to different sections on your website where you talk about different topics. And again, when you have your new book coming out, The School is Lava, I will definitely be purchasing that and recommending it on my socials. So huge thanks to yourself, and thanks for sharing your expertise, knowledge, and more than anything, your parental lived experience. So huge thanks to everyone for listening. So I suppose goodbye for now from myself.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
No, thank you. I suppose the thanks is all mine to give. So thanks.